Our unit is on shapes.
And these are our objectives. Understand the geometric topics of shapes and properties, transformation, location, and visualization. Recognize where students may have difficulty understanding geometric concepts. Use manipulatives to better understand the properties of shapes. And identify the level of progress of students by using the Van Heel model for levels of geometric reasoning.
So the content for the geometric units, they're basically broken down into 4 topics. So shapes and properties and transformation is the first 2. Shapes and properties are properties of 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional shapes, and the relationship between these properties, which kind of gets more and more complex, and we'll go into that later with the Van Heel model. And then transformation, which is study of translations, reflections, rotations, which is a slide, flip, and turn. And symmetry, and also the more basic, the concept of similarity, which you do with the younger grades.
These are the 2, I guess, categories. The content of geometric unit is location and visualization. Location is basically where the shape is located, whether it's on a plane or on a quadrant. So it's just other ways of specifying where objects are located on a plane or in sort of space. Visualization, it's their ability to recognize shapes in the environment, see relationships between 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional shapes. Like in class, we use the nets for 3-dimensional, with the squares and the to make the cube, just to visually and use as a manipulative. Their ability to draw and recognize objects from different perspectives, and they need a sort of spatial sense, which is their knowledge or intuition about shapes and relationships amongst other shapes.
And some people will say there's studies or stuff online about geometry where some people have spatial sense, some people don't. It's something that everyone has to some degree, but it needs to be cultivated by having a lot of experience with manipulatives, because kids might not be able to understand the net because they haven't seen that before. They haven't looked at a 3-dimensional object as a deconstructed combination of 2-dimensional objects. So it's all about how much experience they get with that.
Because when you see in a textbook on a worksheet, you don't actually visually see what a cube is or a 3-dimensional object is. On a sheet, it's still flat.
So we looked at studies and issues in teaching geometry, and this is from an article where they did a study of high school students, but that's eventually what our students are going to get to. They're going to be up there, and these are some high school problems that high school students have. So in studies by Reiser, Pratt, and Lawson Chinapan, researchers found that a group of less successful problem solvers at a high school level failed to use a substantial body of their available knowledge in attempts to solve geometry problems, yet they could access the knowledge when prompted to do so. So important components of knowledge remained inert in these students until they were given cues by the researcher. So it's something to think about and keep in mind that they know it, but they're not saying it for some reason.
And that's at a high school level, so that just shows their prior education, they still weren't comfortable, All right, so what this means for us as teachers: students may need cues, but they also need to build confidence and feel as though they're in a safe, supportive environment. And teachers need to immerse students in the language of geometry so that students become used to this usage or language and terminology. Cues are important, but at the same time, as teachers, we can't rely on cues. The students need to be able to build their knowledge with themselves or with a partner. They have that knowledge, they need to use it. And a lot of students are too timid, or they may know the answer, or know how to get it in their own way, but are looking for you to kind of prompt them. And like we saw it when we learned about shapes in class, the polygons versus the polyhedrons, we didn't know the different terminologies and how, the different size, angles, edges, those different shapes had different names. So again, just being used to the terminology, using manipulatives, this all kind of incorporates and helps students learn.
Okay. So the Van Heel levels of geometric reasoning, that's the husband of the Van Heel group. So it starts with, everyone's kind of familiar with this, starts with level 0, which is visualization. So that's appearances and a likeness, and they don't really know, students can identify shapes by name, but without reasoning for it. They don't say it has these properties, they say it's a circle because they've been told before this is what a circle looks like. And then we move up to level 1, which is analysis. So that's when shapes become classified by their properties, and the relationship between the properties is unknown yet. They're not sure what, like it has square has 4 equal length sides, but they don't really go more in depth into the angles, all of that. And then there's level 2, informal deduction. So that's when they're really getting involved in it, and that's the if-then reasoning. So they're classifying shapes by a minimum number of characteristics, and students can recognize relationships amongst properties of the geometric objects. So they say if it is a square, all angles are right angles. If it is a square, it's also a rectangle. So it's if, then. And these also, they don't go by age. It's kind of like Piaget. We discussed this also before, that students can be in different levels for different types of math. Yeah, well, so obviously for this is focusing on geometry, but they can be in different places and different things. So you gotta kind of be able to look at, they can be, 5th grader and still be at level 0. We don't know. So this is how we were able to write our assessments and assess our students when we use our geometry-based lesson plans.
So what do you think coordinate geometry is without looking at the next? Any ideas or what's incorporated into it, different terminologies that are within coordinate geometry? Mary?
Plotted on like a line.
Okay, and what do you like plot?
Figures like X and Y, the X and Y's of coordinates.
So you have the X and the Y. So these are these are plots. What are they plots on? What numbers? Coordinates.
Okay, so that's one part of it, that's the coordinate part. And how would, if it's coordinate geometry, how does geometry factor into having plotting things like this?
With plotting points that make shapes.
We have a definition after, okay. Coordinate geometry is the set of geometrically representing ordered pairs of numbers. So that's basically what you guys are able to see. And we just have an example of a triangle plotted. What we're going to look at actually is rectangles and rectangle-based shapes.
So here's the state standards that are used within this. You have plot points to form basic geometric shapes, identify, also classify those different shapes, and calculate perimeter and basic geometric shapes drawn on the coordinate plane. Rectangles and shapes composed of rectangles have sides with integral lines and parallel to axes. So you could also calculate and figure out the perimeter of shapes on a coordinate plane.
And when it gets to the 6th grade level, then they're going to be looking at area. But just for the 5th grade standards, they only have perimeter for this. It helps them visualize, being able to count the little line segments. Yeah. So we have a little thing just remembering how to plot coordinates, which is what Mary was talking about, which is you have the 2 axes, the x-axis and y-axis. So x-axis is horizontal and y is vertical. And the way I remember this, someone in actually one of my high school pre-cal classes brought up as x, like a xylophone, like when you play, it goes to the sides, and then yo-yo goes up and down. There's a couple of pictures. And the order, how to remember the order of, they call them those, an x, comma y, those numbers, those would be ordered pairs. So for x, it's kind of like the run, since you're horizontal, run before you jump.